Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to session course. This is Dr. Shikha Khera, your instructor at University. My dear students, now we have reached to the stage to discuss statistics and skill abilities of individual employees in organization. So this session titled Competency Mapping will be dedicated on understanding what is competency mapping and what are the different factors contributing to it, and how competency mapping can be a cutting-edge competitive advantage factor for the organization. You must have heard a terminology called skill. Do you wonder why and how skill is not exactly the same as competency? Skill is a specific trait which any individual carries to carry out a particular job. Like you can have accounting skills, you can have sales skill, you can have coding skill. So the skill or the ability to carry out a particular job is termed as a skill. While competency, on the other hand, is a blend of knowledge and behavior which is required to carry out any job. For example, critical ability is a competency. Teamwork is a competency. Leadership is a competency, where knowledge and a specific behavior is blended together to perform in the organization. So let us understand the competence and competency mapping and find out how the core competence becomes competitive advantage and leads to above average returns in the organizations. Moving forward, let's first answer formally what is competence. So as I told you, it refers to the behavioral manifestation of any skill that an individual possesses. So it answers the question, how does the person do a particular job, which included skill plus the behavior. It also shows how a person applies the knowledge that he has and the skills in real life situation. So you may be having skill of MS Excel. You know how to operate on MS Excel. You know how the formulas are. That is your skill. But how well you apply this skill along with the knowledge and come out with effective decision making. That is, you apply MS Excel formulas, for example, formula of regression, correlation, t-test, to infer something, to decide on something. That is your competence. So the broader view of competence, as per the classic definition given by initial pioneers in the field, including McClelland, Spencer and Parry, competence is an underlying characteristic of an individual. This underlying characteristic first predicts the superior performance on the job situation. So that is the benefit of having competence. Second, it combines knowledge, skill, trait, self-concept and motives all together. So students, when we collectively utilize all these factors, we say that we are competent to do a particular task. Competence is observable through behaviors at the work. So we can identify whether someone is competent or not based on the behavior he shows at the place of the work. Competencies are not only about technical expertise. That is, technical expertise is skill. It is beyond technical expertise. And what all it includes? It includes interpersonal skills like communication and teamwork, personal attributes like resilience and integrity, and cognitive ability like problem solving and creativity. So when we are performing a job, we have to showcase our competence or ability, whether we work effectively in team or not. Are we able to communicate in right manner, or the right information at the right time or not? Do we have resilience to come out and bounce back from challenging situations? Are we showing our integrity towards the workplace? Can we creatively solve the problems which hinder, or maybe creatively solving problems which lead to higher organizational results? So all these will comprise of our competencies. When do we call any factor as a competence, or if not factor, then any ability or skill is termed as competence when? First, it must have these criteria fulfilled. That ability and skill must be observable, must be demonstrated through the behavior. Second, it should be transferable, can apply across jobs and different contexts. Third, it is measurable, can be assessed through standards. So we can assess that ability or skill. And fourth, it is differentiating, it distinguishes superior performers from the average ones. So those who are superior performers, they have competence, and the average ones, they have skills. So if any ability qualifies all these four criterias, that is, it is observable, it is transferable, it is measurable, and it can differentiate between a super keeper, superhero, or a star performer and the average performer, then that phenomenon is a competence. Now, competency has been studied by various researchers. Amongst them, one of the researchers were Spencers and Spencers, who gave their model in 1993. They divided competency into 5 elements. First, element of competence must be including knowledge. Knowledge is know-how about that phenomena, or you can also say information that a person has about that concept, phenomena, or specific area. Like you must be well versed with finance or IT or HR or marketing concepts or information. So the second element of competence is the skill, ability to perform a task. So that is, you can negotiate or you can do coding. So if you have IT knowledge, with the help of IT knowledge, you can do coding. If you have HR knowledge, with the help of HR knowledge, you can negotiate. The third element of competence is the self-concept. That is, what is your attitude, your values, and self-image about yourself? So, to what extent are you ethical in behavior, or you are confident of doing something? So, let's add on now. If you have knowledge of HR and you are able to negotiate, while negotiating you are confident and ethical also, then you are moving ahead in development of the competency within you. The fourth element of competency is the physical characteristics or consistent behaviors like extroversion or patience. And if you are performing this negotiation as an extrovert or with patience, then that is the trait you are manifesting in the physical form. And the last element by Spencer and Spencer model is motives. With what intention? So that is depicted in your behavior. You want to achieve at the end of the day and win that negotiation, or you want to have an affiliation need fulfilled here. So all these elements combined together make any ability a competence. Let me recapitulate. If you have knowledge about a phenomena and the skill related to carry out that phenomena, self-concept is in alignment like confidence, traits are including your persistence, patience, and extroversion, and your intentions are positive, then we call it as a competency. We all know that any organization will survive in the environment if the organization has competitive advantage. This competitive advantage takes the organization to have above average returns. These above average returns help the organization gain market share. So now these terms are all having cascading effect on each other. Let us focus on if any organization wants to be competitively higher or wants to beat the competition, then what are the competencies required to do so? Such competencies are clear accountability, improved communication, decision making linked with strategy, and integration of performance with the compensation. Let's elaborate these. Your subordinate or the employees or members of organization must have a clear accountability, that is answerability. They know whom to answer and when to answer and what is to be answered. That is, they are clear about their role also. The communication in the organization must be facilitated properly. Decision making should be in alignment with the strategic objectives of the organization, and performance must be linked with compensation properly. There should be good association between the compensation given to the employee and the performance that he is projecting. So when we achieve these 4 criteria, we are in a position to say that yes, we are going to achieve competitive advantage in the organization. Let's have some discussion on the interface between competence and competency. Competence is what that is refers to the skill-based dimension of competency. It is nothing but the skill you carry, what skill you carry, what ability you have, what capacity you have to perform a particular task. It is measurable against the standards. So that becomes our competence. Example, an engineer's competence is knowledge of mechanical design principles. A driver's competence is ability to operate a car. So these are measurable. These are the capacities of that individual's or skill or ability of the individual to which will enable them to perform. Now here, ability to operate a car is not showing the performance. Here performance is missing. It's only we know that the person is able to do it. The person has the knowledge of mechanical design principles. But how will he perform? How will he apply his knowledge? That will become the competency. So, competency is how they will achieve any scenario. That is the behavioral dimension. If I go back, it was the skill dimension, competence. Now, competency demonstrates how a person applies that skill and knowledge in real work scenario. It focuses on overt observable behavior, their attitude, their motives and their style when they are on the job. Example, the engineer demonstrates competency by solving design problems creatively and collaboratively because he has competence of mechanical design understanding. The driver shows competency by driving safely, confidently and responsibly because he has competence of driving. I hope students you have understood the difference between competence and competency. So competence is the knowledge of the skill and competency is the ability to manifest that skill along with knowledge and behavior. Now, competence and competency eventually must lead to effective performance. So competence without competency is a person knows what to do but may fail in how to do that work. Competency without competence is a person may have right behavior but lacks the technical knowledge or the skill. So that means in order to have effective performance, we must have competency and competence both. So together they ensure superior performance. Competence provides the knowledge skill base and competency ensures effective context and appropriate application. Why competency mapping is needed in the organization? First reason is aligning behavior with the strategy. What is strategy? Nothing but the game plan or long-term vision achievement for the organization. So competency mapping links employee behavior with organizational strategy. It ensures that what employee does, that is the behavior, and directly contributes to achieving business objectives. For example, if innovation is a strategic priority in the organization, the focus is on innovation. Competencies like creativity and adaptability are emphasized upon, and thus the behavior is aligned with the strategy. And that is why competency mapping is needed. Second reason why competency mapping is needed in the organization is to build a competent workforce. Organizations succeed when they hire and retain competent people. Competency mapping provides a clear benchmark for selecting employees who not only meet the technical requirements but also demonstrate the behavior necessary for superior performance. So, competency mapping helps in building a competent workforce. Competent mapping enhances the performance of recruitment and selection. So what do we mean by enhancement in performance of recruitment and selection? Through competency mapping, we can have effective recruitment. That is, we are able to attract a relevant pool of individuals to perform a job. And we are able to conduct right kind of psychometric testing or personality testing by which we can judge whether the person or the individual is suitable for the job or not. So by defining key competencies for each role, competency mapping creates structured interview questions, psychometric assessments, and evaluation tools. This reduces hiring errors and ensures the best fit between the job requirements and the employee abilities. So what are hiring errors? One hiring error can be that we reject right candidate. And the second hiring error can be we select the wrong candidate. So both these errors have to be eliminated. And this can only be eliminated if we are in a position to highlight the key competencies for the role. We know the key competencies, so we will select only those who carry the key competencies. Next reason why competency mapping is important in organization is once you have selected right candidate and recruited the right candidate, it enhances the productivity and performance. Thus, it identifies the gaps between the current employee capability and required standards, which will eventually lead to higher productivity and performance. It strengthens the 360-degree feedback. Now, what was 360-degree feedback? We studied in the chapters of talent management. Feedback from superior, peer, and subordinates is mapped against clearly defined behavioral indicators. So, thus it makes appraisal more objective and reliable, that is free from subjective biases. Next is that competency mapping facilitates training and development. Thus, it is required. How does it facilitate training and development? Because with the help of competence mapping, we can highlight the skill gap between the individuals. And when we can highlight the skill gap, we can identify what is the right kind of training or executive development we have to impart to the current employee so that he performs to his best of potential. Then further, competency mapping supports the succession planning. By doing competency mapping, we can highlight those who are star performers, those who have the ability to lead the organization tomorrow because they have good blend of knowledge and behavior which is required to carry out the job. Thus, competency mapping also helps in succession planning. Competency mapping ensures that the consistency is followed across the HR systems, as it provides a common language for HR functions such as recruitment, appraisal, promotion or rewards. Thus, with this consistency across HR systems, competency mapping becomes essential. It helps in creating a roadmap for organizational growth by aligning people capability with organizational goals. So this is the benefit of competency mapping. Now, how do we develop a competency model? First step is introduction to competency model development. It determines the objective and the scope. So, first step is to clarify why competency mapping is being undertaken. Scope and objective is whether it will help us in identifying training needs, whether it will help us in identifying recruitment selection needs, whether it will help in succession planning, whether it will help us in organizational growth. Why are we going to adopt or adapt to competence mapping? So this is, it mentions for these HR functions, whether for these or the scope must be defining for which job roles, for which department are we targeting to have competency mapping. By doing this, it ensures that project remains focused and relevant throughout the process. Second point, while we develop the competency mapping, is that we have to link it with the strategy. So objective must be aligned with the business strategy. For example, a company focusing on customer service excellence will emphasize competencies like empathy, problem solving, communication. Without strategic alignment, competency model may fail and do not add any value to the organization. So here in this example, students, you must have understood that the competence for customer service excellence includes empathy, problem solving and communication. When we add on these three competencies, we not only resolve, we achieve higher service excellence with respect to customer in the organization. Thus, we link competence with the strategy. Next is identifying source of information. Information is gathered from multiple sources while we develop the competency model. So basically, we are developing a competency model for the organization at large. So what all sources would we be referring to develop that? First, we will identify the job descriptions and the process documents to understand the responsibilities. Now, what is a job description, students? Job description and job specification we studied during the recruitment process. They are the byproducts of job analysis. So in job description, we describe what are the roles, responsibilities and tasks to be done in a particular job. So if the job is of a salesperson, specific jobs, specific tasks that he has to travel, then he has to meet the clients, he has to identify the potential lead, he has to discuss, negotiate and convert the potential lead into the purchase order. So all these are part of that particular job description, right? So when we are developing a competency model, we need to have source of information, that is, which job are we talking about for which we are developing the competency model, that is for what responsibilities. Second, to capture real behavior expectations, we should go ahead with techniques like interview and focus groups. By interviews and focus groups, we can identify how people behave in a real-time scenario. Do they fumble? Are they nervous? Do they forget things? Are they able to handle the questions? Are they able to answer questions properly? Does the right answer click them in the stressful situation? So all these can be handled when we try to utilize techniques like interviews and focus groups. Then comes customer feedback and market data is one of the sources of information. This aligns with external demand also. Now, with the help of job description, we are able to cater to or identify the internal factors within the organization. And with respect to customer feedback, we find out the external demands. And the fourth source of information is training records. These training records help us identify existing strengths and gaps in the skills and abilities of individuals. So now in this step, we have tried to collect the information because we have to develop a good competency model for our organization. Then comes collecting behavioral data. Here, the key to effective competence mapping lies in identifying observable behavior techniques. So what are the observable behavior techniques? First technique is behavioral event interviews, BEI. Here we ask employees to narrate incidents of their success and failure. So from the employee's mouth only we are collecting the behavior data, areas when they were or situations in which they were a success or the situations in which they were a failure. Second way of collecting data is critical incident method. Now this helps in analyzing movements of high impact performance. So movements of high impact performance, we are saying it because these were the critical incidents that happened while he was on the job. If you remember during performance appraisal, modern techniques, we discussed critical incident method. And what were the examples? Examples like when an employee did something extra or beyond the job that he was meant to. That is going an extra mile. So if some person is dealing with a customer in hospitality industry and he beyond his job role, job description, performs some action or behavior that gives customer satisfaction and brings customer loyalty, that is the critical incident that we noted down. And vice versa, if someone did not perform his normal duties, rather did some error or wrong behavior with the customer or during the job, that is also a critical incident. So that critical incident is measured in a ledger. Here we are collecting the behavioral data. So here we are capturing those movements which created high impact. So that means positive critical incident. We are talking about the positive critical incident. Then the next is observation and surveys. By capturing consistent patterns of behavior. So through surveys we can capture that information, through observation also we can capture that information. So on the whole, the third step is collecting the behavioral data so that we can plan what behaviors are accepted and what behaviors to be rejected while planning for a competency model in the organization. Now the stage 4 is developing the competence model itself. So at this stage, competencies are defined in clear behavioral terms. So here we very well make it crisp and noticeable that what behaviors are do's and don'ts. So each competency is described with definition, that is what is the meaning of that competency, behavioral indicator, how it looks in action, and level of proficiency, basic, intermediate, advanced or expert. This ensures clarity and measurability across roles and levels. So if we have to define the ability of a teacher, we have to define it that the teacher must have the knowledge about the subject. behavioral indicators must deliver lecture with impact, and level of proficiency including knowledge and skill. So this was the skill: basic knowledge, intermediate knowledge, advanced knowledge, or an expert. So this clearly measures at the end and tells the employee what kind of competency model he has to work on. Then comes the stage to validate the model, because without validating, nothing is reliable and valid. Validating means that yes, actually the model developed measures the competency or delivers the competency which it is meant for. So validation ensures the accuracy in the job, relevance with the job. And how do we validate the competency model? We validate with the help of 360-degree feedback, that is comparing the model expectation with real-time perceptions. Second, we validate with the help of assessment centers, where simulation, role plays and case studies are conducted to see the output. And the third is statistical validation, that is by applying techniques like correlation, etc. We correlate the competencies with performance data. So this is one of the most technical ways to find out, because here we are writing the competency and the result in form of performance that we have achieved. So this step builds credibility and organizational buy-in plans. So I hope students, you are understanding the concept of competency model building in the organization. Then the next step is implementing competency model in HR system. So competency model must be integrated into all HR processes, like first, recruitment and selection. Structured interview and test must be incorporated. In training and development, addressing skill gaps must be incorporated. In performance appraisal, rating against competencies must be done. Rating against competencies means if competency 1 is so if these are different competencies, then each should be rated with some numeric value. That is, rating against competencies should take place, and then career planning and succession planning, preparing leaders for future roles. You can see here, students, you are HR students, and any HR student would understand the importance of recruitment, selection, training, succession planning and performance appraisal. So all these are the 4 strong pillars of any good HR system in the organization, and all these 4 have their own competency models built within the organization. Such competency models help the organization to have a clear-cut path in the respective HR subdomain. So these are HR subdomains. Now that we have developed the competence model for all the scenarios in the organization, and all these competency models have been incorporated with the main HR strategy also. Is it that all these competency models are free from any flaws and can be implemented at any point in time in any given scenario? No, that's not the case. So there do exist some amount of issues and challenges in developing the competency models. So as students of HR, you must be aware of these issues and challenges in developing the competency model. So the first issue or challenge is the commitment of the management in the organization. Is the organization serious about developing a competency model? Now here, serious commitment means that have they allocated time, budget and resources to carry out the activity for competency model building? Are they ensuring active participation of leaders and not just the HR personals in the organization? Because anything that is leadership philosophy, that sustains well. Thus, a leader's interest is very important when it comes to development of competency model also. Then, Integrating competency into business strategy rather than treating them as HR add-ons. So if we want to develop competence model, we have to see that what is the level of commitment of the management. Second, quality versus excellence. So what is the aim in the organization? Organizations must decide whether they want competency mapping to ensure basic threshold performance, that is, employees meet minimum standards. Only for this reason they are developing the competency model, or they want to have excellence in their performance or any differentiating or unique performance by the employees, thus identifying behaviors that separate or outstanding performance from the average ones. So what is the aim? The third issue that comes in development of competency mapping is sustainability. That is one-time effort or continuous process. What is sustainability? It is a continuous process. So are the organization members doing it just for the sake of doing and making it a paperwork shuffle, or they genuinely are interested in having long-term sustainability? So competency mapping should not be one of the projects in the organization. Sustainable competency frameworks are required, and periodic reviews and updates of competency model is to be carried out. Integration into ongoing HR system is mandatorily required. So treating competency mapping as a continuous process, what is the benefit of it? It ensures that the framework stays relevant, adaptable, and future ready. This is the most important takeaway, that if we have a sustainability concern in our mind. So we have tried to find out that if there are any issues when we develop a competency model, and we realize that the issue should be issues revolve around the leadership philosophy and whether they want to have it on a continuous basis or on a sustainability level, and whether they want to apply it at all the levels or not. Then comes overcoming challenges in competency mapping. So we discussed on certain challenges just now. Let us see how we overcome the challenges in competency mapping. So the first challenge in competency mapping can be removed by having effective training and communication. So clear communication, employees may resist competency mapping if they don't understand its purpose. So organizations must clearly explain why competencies are being assessed. Now this every employee will be shirking. Every employee will feel that I have a skill to do the job. Why are you prompting me to know additional knowledge and behavioral patterns? Because employee himself doesn't know that if he has along with the skill the relevant knowledge and the relevant behavior patterns, then only he can achieve what is to be achieved as a professional. Otherwise they are just doing the job for the sake of it. So a proper change management understanding should be, or kind of behavioral training to be given to them, so that they understand the relevance of competency building and competency mapping in organization. Second, how it benefits employees' career growth, that should be made clear to him. Because the general tendency of any employee is that they resist any change. So in order to remove this resistance to change or decline this resistance to change, we must tell them how their personal growth will be benefited by competency mapping. And third aspect is how it aligns with organizational goals, that should be made clear to the employee. If these activities are carried out in the communication pattern, the competency mapping process becomes easier. Next is conduct workshops or sessions, that is the training programs to educate employees on required competencies. Demonstrate how competencies are measured, because when they know how they are measured, they know what they have to perform. Okay, so for example, you are writing an exam, so you want to know that how my teacher will evaluate my answer. for each answer which is of 5 mark, what is expected of me, how, whether it is my writing, whether it is my communication skill, conciseness, clarity in terms of language, or the presentation, whether it is point wise or paragraph wise, whether I have to write some specific words in the answer. So what is the expectation from me? When you know those expectations, you frame your answer properly, because you know on what basis your answer will be measured or evaluated. So the same thing applies in the organization. The members or the employees must be told that this is the competency we will judge or check in you, and this is how we will measure. This makes task easy for them to perform the right method while they are doing the job. And third is to reduce the anxiety and build the trust in the process, so that they are not anxious that we'll be measured and we may fail, or they may demote us, or they may transfer us, or they may not give us increment. That kind of fear factor should be reduced, that anxiety should be reduced, and a trust should be built that we are doing this workshop or session, or we are employing these competencies to enhance your performance, not to trouble you. So this is to be communicated to the employee. We can use multiple assessment methods also here to avoid reliance on a single tool. Like soft skills and behavioral competencies are difficult to measure with just one method. So what we can do? We can combine different assessment methods like 360-degree feedback for soft skill assessment, behavioral event interviews for soft skill assessment, and psychometric test for soft skill assessment, which measures the personality and emotional intelligence and cognitive ability of the individual. By this, we will be overcoming the biases of one method. If we use only one method, there can be biases. So when we use multiple methods, the consistency of results may help us find out how to enhance the competency mapping. Regularly updating competency frameworks. So why update? Because competencies are required today may become obsolete tomorrow. So someone who knew how to operate a particular machine 20 years back may be now a redundant knowledge, because the upgradation or innovation in the features of that machine has taken place. So as a result, the knowledge and skill that that person had 20 years ago is now obsolete. So competency mapping also needs to be on a continuous basis, so that employee gets training on the new technologies and their obsolete and redundant knowledge is erased off. Then methods for updating the competency framework may include review industry benchmarks and best practices which are in today's time prevalent, conduct periodic gap analysis in the performance and the standards, and gather feedback from employees and the managers. This will help organizational members to find any gap in performance and what are the areas of improvement. Now, applications of competency mapping. On what areas of organization competency mapping is applied to? Primarily, it is meant with the HR department to apply competency mapping in any of the tasks and job roles they assign to the individual employee. But as we know that competency mapping is not just a theoretical framework, it has practical application across the entire HR system. Thus, it ensures that organizational strategies are translated into employee performance and measurable outcomes. So thus we have to apply the competency mapping. The key buzzword here is that organizational strategies are converted into employee performance with the help of competency mapping. Selection and staffing. So first application is in selection and staffing. That is, competency mapping supports the use of behavioral interview questions, psychometric and aptitude test and assessment centers through role plays, case studies and simulation exercises. So here what happens, it ensures that candidates are evaluated against role-specific behavior indicators, and thus we can have a right kind of selection method, or right people are selected in organization. Second is, it is applied on performance management, that is how we can improve the performance in the organization. So employees receive feedback on specific competencies like decision making or teamwork. This shifts focus from just outcomes to how results are achieved, enabling development-oriented appraisals and continuous improvement. So we have answers in the end. When we talk about performance, what are the answers? What are the results that are achieved? And second thing is that how that results have been achieved. Here we have to find out why these results have achieved. So why is when we try to highlight which competency they utilize, and this competency whether was effectively utilized or not. If not effectively utilized, then probably we cannot have a continuous improvement in the organization. Next, application can be on training and development to identify the gap areas, and training and development for focused learning. So from the same sub area of human resource management, we can have two different dimensions. The first dimension is T&D activities carried out to identify the gap so that we plan for the training. And the second perception or dimension is focused learning. So here training and development can be imparted for having more impactful learning and aligned with competency needs. For instance, if communication is identified as a gap, then tailor-made workshops and coachings can be designed for those who lack in communication and interpersonal skills, which is part of the soft skill. Then application is on succession planning, that is preparing leaders. So by mapping the competencies or the current skills against the future role requirement, organization can create a leadership pipeline. We discussed in previous sessions also, but here the application is of competency mapping. So competence mapping also helps us in preparing a leadership pipeline. It also helps, competency mapping also helps in having effective compensation and reward system. So linking pay to the competency is a key characteristic here. Thus, competency mapping reinforces the desired behavior, because competence mapping is enabling us to understand which behavior is required to be performed in a job. And what we do in compensation and reward, we reward and compensate the behavior. So thus the employee is motivated enough to perform that behavior and upgrade himself on regular basis. So competency mapping has a great application in the field of compensation and rewards also. Next comes the models and frameworks of competency mapping. The first model of competency mapping is iceberg model, which was developed by Spencer and Spencer in 1993. So this model explains that competencies are like an iceberg. What is an iceberg? So if this is a sea, we know here the ice in the sea, there is a tip of the iceberg, and we can see a part of the iceberg above the sea. But the larger area of the iceberg is below the sea. So this is how competency has been described by Spencer and Spencer, that competencies are like iceberg. The visible part of the competency, which is above the water, is the knowledge and the skill that a person possesses, while hidden below the water is the self-concept, the traits and the motives which cannot be seen but felt. So this is why competency has been compared with an iceberg. The second model of competency is the pyramid model. So this model organizes competencies in the shape of a pyramid, showing the levels of the depth. So what happens in a pyramid? Have you seen the pyramids in Giza? These pyramids have different levels. So the base and foundation is the inherent talent, personal attributes, adaptability and learning orientation. This is the base of the pyramid, where someone has those talents which they have probably inherently acquired through their birth, some personal attributes that are part of their personality, which includes their adaptability and learning orientation towards any new concept. Then comes middle layer. This middle layer is the skill and knowledge that can be learned. So they are interested in learning something new and they can develop that skill and knowledge acumen within themselves. The top layer of the pyramid is the specific behavior and actions that reflect in the integration of knowledge, skill and attribute. So they have knowledge and skill and they have attributes. They all are integrated at the level of behavior. So that is why a pyramid model for competency has been suggested. The personal competency framework is a framework which originated from job competency survey conducted in 1980s. This framework identified 45 competencies under the categories like intellectual competencies, personal competencies, communication-oriented competencies, interpersonal, leadership, and result-oriented competencies. So this personal competency framework, PCF, has been applied in India at Maruti Udyog Limited. The HR team and consultants work together to tailor the PCF to company's context. And this allowed Maruti to align recruitment, performance appraisal and development program with its organizational needs. So we can say here that job competency survey enabled an organization to identify as much as 45 competencies which can be applied in the framework for any particular job. So all 45 competencies may not be required for every job. Out of these 45 competencies, there can be clusters of different categories of competencies which may be required for X, Y, Z or different jobs. So we have some industry case applications here. The first industry case application is of HPCL, that is Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited. So it says that built competency is based on assessment centers to identify high potential leaders. So the technique used is the assessment center. You remember, students, what were assessment centers? We have already discussed. These are series of exercises. And what kind of exercises? We have brainstorming exercises here, which also in the form of group discussion. So different interventions can be used for assessment centers, case studies or role plays also. So integrated the framework into HR systems to improve consistency and objective in the performance. So HPCL has applied this competency of developing high potential leaders with the help of assessment centers. Second example is of Gujarat Heavy Chemicals Limited. The organization has focused on aligning employee behaviors with strategic goals. So it created competency profiles for leadership roles. It ensures effective decision making. Now you can see that the focus here is on which competence? Focus is on employee behavior, and that behavior should be in line with the strategic goal of the organization. So this competency has been focused by Gujarat Heavy Chemicals Limited. The third case application is Hindustan Sanitaryware and Industries Limited. It uses competency mapping to strengthen management practices. How? They have focused on identifying the leadership and functional competencies needed for growth. So their area of focus is leadership and functional competencies. This particular exercise has helped the organization in redesigning their training and appraisal system. Now, what is training and appraisal system? This is the functional competence. Training is a functional competence. Appraisal system is a functional competence. So the organization has focused on leadership and training and performance system. By enhancing these competencies, they have enhanced their organizational performance. Now, with Hindustan Sanitary Ware Limited, when they focused on their leadership, performance appraisal and training competencies, what came as the outcome was they built a cadre of future ready managers. So leadership succession planning was successful there. They improved consistency in their performance appraisals and promotion by using competency as the benchmark. So as a result, what happened that they could achieve higher productivity and strengthened the company's ability to adapt to market changes and organizational transformation. So this is an outcome. This is an outcome of the competencies that they focused upon. And finally, they created a more professional, competency-driven culture. So this is also an outcome when they focused on their leadership, performance appraisal and training competency or other functional competencies. The outcomes were manifested in the form of a culture which is driven by the competency framework, and they were able to transform the organization as per the market demands. The fourth example is of NTPC, that is National Thermal Power Corporation. It implemented a competency-based HR framework for engineers and managers in the areas of technical and functional competencies for both engineering and operative work, behavioral competencies like teamwork, safety orientation and integrity, and managerial competencies like leadership, problem solving and innovation. I think by now students, you are very much clear with the difference between the skill, competence and competency. As you can see on the screen, there are a lot of competencies we are talking about on a regular basis in today's session, like leadership, problem solving, innovation, integrity, safety orientation, teamwork, etc. So we as budding managers must see to it how we improve our competencies like the ones which are given here, as there are successful examples of the organizations which, when implemented these competency frameworks, could do wonders in their success of the organization. The next example is of Infosys Technologies. So here a competency framework for software engineer has been implemented, which included technical competencies, process competencies and behavioral competencies. Respectively, they have system analysis, then quality assurance, then communication and innovation. And finally, how Infosys was helped. It was helped in having employee skill certification, training and global project allocation. So these are the benefits of having that competency in the organization. So what is the future of competency mapping? Future is that it has, since it is integrated with the HR analytics in today's time, and we have a big data with us, so it is data-driven insight and predictive analytics. This can help identify the potential skill gaps, make the future leaders ready. Also, it can affect the performance and behavior. Thus, the benefits of having competency mapping integrated with HR analytics is that we have objective decision making, improved accuracy, and linking competency to business outcomes. Second, personalized competency development plans can be made, with the help of which we can have individual growth, and this individual growth can help in achieving on-the-job projects and mentorship opportunities. And the benefits can be higher engagement and motivation of employees, retention of top talent and skill development, which by now we have, I think, understood well. Also, we can have agile competency frameworks in future. These can be the ones who will have periodic update based on industry trends in future. Rapid integration of new competencies like digital skills and AI literacy. AI literacy is something which is very relevant in today's time, which is one of the new competencies to be built. So continuous feedback loops to refine the competencies in organization will take place. So students, we have tried to identify the various competencies which are required in organization and why competency mapping is important, how models can be developed in organization with respect to competency mapping, and what are the benefits of these models. Today These are the references which I have referred to for this particular. Go into detail to understand some new scenarios about the my side for this session. I thank you all for listening patiently.